thank you all for being here and joining RiverArts today. And thank you to our special guest. This has been really fun. This is the second in a series of 4 that RiverArts is doing with ShoreRivers about things that we consider essential. And it's really fun to talk about art and the environment, especially during these times together. So I'm going to start with a quote by Naomi Klein, who is a New York Times bestselling author who I got to hear in person speak a couple of years ago, and she was fantastic. And from her book that's called This Changes Everything, she says, if there's ever been a moment to advance a plan to heal the planet that also heals our broken economies and our shattered communities, this is it. So thank you for being here, Mariah.
Thanks, Anne, and welcome everybody. I am Mariah Wood, and I am the Executive Director of RiverArts, and I'm so excited that we're doing this month-long collaboration with the wonderful folks at ShoreRivers. And I would encourage you all to visit both of our websites and donate and volunteer generously with your funds and your time, because nonprofits need all the help we can get, especially right now, but always. So I think that my job now is to introduce Darran and Tim, who I think a lot of you probably already know, but Tim Trumbauer is the Chester River keeper, who is, as far as I can tell, completely unanimously adored, esteemed, respected, as a human being and as a river keeper. So I am so happy that Tim is here to share his wisdom and experience. And our other guest host from ShoreRivers is the lovely and talented Darran Tilghman, who is the Director of Community Engagement there and who is involved in so many ways in all kinds of aspects of life in this community, and who I am very happy and privileged to know. And so I'm gonna let them take over, but the idea of these salons is for people to be able to kind of come together and connect on ideas and questions that are interesting and important. And so I hope that you'll all speak up with your questions and comments and thoughts.
Gosh, could you just introduce us for the entire salon, Mariah? That was so lovely. Thank you.
No problem.
And yes, I just want to say, I think Tim and I both will have a lot to say, but we really want to hear from you, and we want to be able to address particular questions you all have. So feel free to raise a hand or wiggle a finger, or just jump in. We're 2 screens deep now, so we may not be able to see all of you. If you need to jump in, you may.
You can also put things in the chat, and I will try to keep my eye on the chat in case that is a place where conversation happens.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here. We're going to start with Tim.
Yeah, and Mariah, you set the expectation so high, I'm almost afraid to talk and ruin it. But thank you, and thank you everyone for being here, and really thank you for the opportunity to do something which I love doing, but I just have not had an opportunity to do that much recently, and that's talk about the Chester River. So I'm so happy to be able to do that, and I'm just going to talk a little bit about the river and ShoreRivers, and then turn it over to Darran, and hopefully we're going to have a good conversation about environmental justice and some of the social work that we're doing right now. So. When talking about the Chester River, the first thing I like to do is just set the perspective and just remind people how lucky we are to live on such a beautiful river, right? So from the wide open expanses and the bays of the lower river and the oyster bars all the way up through Chestertown and into the wooded, meandering, narrow creeks of the upper river near Crumpton, we really have a beautiful river here. That's unique, right? There aren't a lot of rivers in this metropolitan area that we still live in. It's hard to remember that we're an hour and a half from DC, Baltimore, Philadelphia, and we have this amazingly beautiful landscape that really is worth protecting. So the Chester is the environmental, economic, and cultural center of our area, and it really is, so valuable to our sense of place. So that's why the work that ShoreRivers does is so important. And for those of you that aren't familiar, I think most of you are, but just the elevator speech and our mission is, we protect and restore Eastern Shore waterways through science-based advocacy, restoration, and education. And I haven't had to say that in a long time either, so I'm glad I still remember it. But we do work on the Chester River. We also have river keepers up on the Sassafras, lower south here in the Miles and Y, and then down on the Choptank River. So most of the Eastern Shore we have covered. And one of the important programs we have is our scientific monitoring program. And the staff and river keepers and volunteers collect over 10,000 data points each year on the Chester River. And that data tells us a lot. And it tells us about the health of the river. And looking at it over the years we've been collecting it, we've learned a few things. And that is, unfortunately, the Chester River is polluted. It's a beautiful river. It's largely fishable and swimmable. So it's great that we have all these uses and things, but it is polluted, and it's primarily polluted from nutrient pollution and sediment pollution. So that's the first important thing. The second important thing is that most of that pollution comes from local sources. Okay, there's all kinds of talk about issues in Baltimore and the Conomingo Dam. Those are all very important to the Bay, but that pollution is not magically washing up in front of Chestertown. Okay, the pollution in Chestertown, wherever you are in the river, is coming from local sources. We've got tons of scientific data that shows that. So that's all kind of bad stuff. But the third point, the good news is that restoration works. We know how to fix it. So where we've done restoration projects, put in treatment wetlands, reduce fertilizer inputs, whatever it is, we've noticed an improvement in water quality. And overall in the Chester, in the past decade or so, water quality has improved. So that's really important to think about. So, some of the restoration work that we do ranges from, a small rain garden at Churchill Elementary School that collects water and treats it from, the parking lots and roofs before it discharges into Southeast Creek, all the way up to multi-acre agricultural wetland projects that treat thousands of acres of farmland. And together we've done over 200 projects that are reducing, I think at last count, about 3,000 tons of pollution from entering the Chester River, which is pretty, well, all of our rivers, not just the Chester, but all the rivers that we work on here. So I encourage you, as I think Mariah said, to go check out our website and learn more about our work. And that's not primarily what we're talking about today, but I just wanted to take the opportunity to let you guys know what we do. And just check out what we do. If you want to get involved and put in a multi-acre wetland on your farm, that's great. Or if you just want to do, you've got a smaller yard perhaps and want to make it more river friendly, we're going to talk a little bit more about that later, but I just want to tease that. And then just quickly talk about, transition over to some of the environmental justice work that we do. And one of the things that we've really dug into lately is this issue of access, right? So we have this beautiful river, but it's not really accessible to everyone in our community. If you don't live on the river or know someone that lives on the river, you really don't get to access it that much. There are very few points, particularly in and around Chestertown, where there's public access. And one of those points is Wilmer Park. And I don't know if you guys have been following the news lately, but Mayor Serino pretty much threw down a gauntlet at a recent mayor and town council meeting and has announced that the town is going to be renovating the Wilmer Park waterfront. And this is great because Wilmer Park is kind of a blank slate right now. Historically, we know that a lot of people haven't seen it as very approachable or a friendly place to be, and we have an opportunity to change that and to really make it a usable, friendly, accessible place for this entire community to access the river. So there will be opportunities to participate in that process and let your voice heard, let all voices be heard about what we want our town's public waterfront to look like. So please pay attention to that. I'll be sharing out lots of information moving forward, but that's something that we really want folks to participate in. So that's enough from me. Darren said I had no more than 5 minutes. I hope that wasn't over. So I'm going to turn it back to her, but certainly welcome your questions and looking forward to this conversation.
That was perfect. Thank you, Tim. You can already see why I'm so proud to work with this organization that's just full of, hero scientists doing restoration work and education. We're working with kids and adults all the time. We're advocating for strong clean water laws. If you are ever lucky enough to be on the Chester River with Tim Trumbauer, don't miss a chance. He sometimes takes volunteers on water monitoring trips. And I have learned so much just by being with Tim and our other river keepers on the Sassafras and the Miles Y and the Choptank. These people know everything about our waterways. Tim can, at full cruising speed, notice that a tree has come down on a bank, and it's just a delight to be with him and learn. So that opportunity also lies in your future, perhaps. So hi, everyone. I'm Darran White-Tilghman. I am the new Director of Community Engagement at ShoreRivers. So my purview is to help us develop a strong and really diverse ambassador base for our work. And that means diverse sort of across every spectrum, right? So by age and ethnicity and income and profession, we need all voices. And to help mobilize grassroots behavior change. So ShoreRivers was these three really grassroots legacy waterkeeper organizations. We merged in 2018 to become a region-wide force for positive change in our waterways. But that grassroots history is still just vitally important to us, and it really is the heart and soul of what we do. We could not do it without the people in our watersheds. And I'm also really grateful and proud of ShoreRivers for intentionally tasking me to help the entire organization work on issues of environmental justice. So just in case you are not fluent in all the acronyms, we tend to say DEIJ, which stands for diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice. That's a common acronym in the world of social justice right now. As Tim was saying, though, a letter that's left out, but that I think is critically important to ShoreRivers, is A, for access. We're really learning now that access to environment is what fuels stewardship, right? How you heard that Tim has fallen in love with this river, and probably all of you have too, but you can't do that if you have no access to it, right? So that's a really important piece. So if you haven't heard about environmental justice, or perhaps you read some of the incredible resources that Mariah and Anne kindly helped us put together before this salon, or perhaps you're planning to do so afterwards. Whatever you know about it, I wanted to share a very few slides with you so that I can give you a couple of little visuals. And I also want to sort of set the stage by saying, we're hearing a lot right now about dealing with three simultaneous crises in our world. So we have the coronavirus pandemic, of course, which is why we're, you know, meeting here by Zoom instead of in person raising a glass. And racial injustice, which has really come to the fore in the last 4 months. And then climate change, right? So these are talked about as kind of three simultaneous crises. And we know that communities of color are disproportionately affected by all three of these. So part of what I want to do in this little section of our presentation is dispel the myth that those are in fact three separate crises, and talk to you a little bit about why we knew that we wanted to address environmental justice as an organization, and also through this series. So I am going to, since I have the power, share my screen with you all and just show you a couple of quick things here. Can you see it? Is it happening? Great. So this might have been your first, or many people's first experience with the term environmental justice. If you hadn't already been steeped in this stuff, it was hard to miss it when the Flint, Michigan water crisis happened. So I'm not going to read you these slides. I love this illustration, however. Talk about art helping inform a movement and helping amplify a movement. This was also, I think for me, the first time that I heard the Black Lives Matter movement specifically weighing in on the environment. Maybe they were doing it before then, but sort of at the national level, Black Lives Matter said, this is environmental racism, right? So this is a situation where, you know, without a doubt, a Black community was affected by a change that they had no input into, right? So a change in the source of their water and very little recourse to deal with. Another example you all may have heard about that's a little closer to home, a community in Curtis Bay, again, a predominantly Black community in Baltimore City, had a proposed trash incinerator. It would have been the largest in the nation, and it was literally blocks from the high school of this young woman, Destiny Watford, who was able to lead a successful campaign against this trash incinerator. Although you're seeing behind her, this neighborhood has already, you know, got oil refineries and chemical plants. The sewage treatment plant is there. You know, I don't know what you all were doing in high school, but I was not, you know, reading my town's zoning plans and mounting a successful campaign to stop, you know, environmental injustice. And it's, you know, it's awesome. This was a fantastic campaign and a really brilliant kind of social media campaign that Destiny Watford led. But the fact that it had to happen that way, right? The fact that this community was otherwise going to have the largest trash incinerator in the nation right next door to their high school is, you know, it speaks to their lack of enfranchisement in the decision-making process. And then in Chestertown, we don't unfortunately have time to talk about all of the ways that we see geography of privilege, although Isabel Hardesty, our deputy director, and I were fortunate enough to lead a walking tour about this with last year's incoming Washington College first-year class. But I just want to kind of gesture at it because it's something you can read in the geography of almost any place. So we're a colonial settlement, as you know, with a college built like many of our early colleges on a hill. And you know why that is. Effluent flows downhill, right? That was truly our waterways were our sewer systems, our waste systems. When this town was founded, waterfront property meant something really different, right? It was not desirable. You can see in the lower right there, that little house that recently was finally demolished right by the marina. But these were merchants and working class people and a lot of Black communities right on our waterfront when waterfront meant, you know, commerce, when it meant sewage flowing down to you, when it meant, you know, unbearable heat, right? So all the ways that we've modernized as a society with air conditioning, with sewage systems has meant that waterfront property becomes desirable, and usually then that communities of color get pushed away from those spaces. But here's another interesting thing about our particular local geography. So this is a map of our region. This line, can you see my cursor? Mm-hmm. Yeah, great. That's our Maryland-Delaware border. And the green indicates, so the orange for some reason is water. Don't worry, it's not lava. The green indicates forested wetlands, palustrine topography here. So forested wetlands mean that this land couldn't be farmed easily, right? And as you all know, in Kent County, if it's good farmable land, it's being farmed, right? So this tends to be the less desirable land, right? It's not productive land, even though from an ecosystem standpoint, it's really productive, right? It's sinking carbon, it's recycling it's, you know, cleaning our wastewater, but it's not farmland. So just kind of keep in mind that here along the state border and over here are our wettest areas. And then this is a demographic map from the Environmental Protection Agency's Environmental Justice Screening Tool, which, oh my gosh, you guys, the tech is so cool now. And I actually was just playing today with a GIS mapping tool that I think is way better than this. I didn't have time to pull you screens, but there's some really exciting advances with this kind of fun mapping tech. Okay, so same thing, here's our state line, and you can see that clustered here this is minority populations here and here. This is individuals whose income is less than 2 times the federal poverty level. So low income populations are kind of along the same, again, same stretch with, of course, some little pockets. Chestertown and Morton both have pockets of these demographics. And then this is individuals 25 or over with less than a high school degree. Those tend to track along the same places. And then here is the proposed Delmarva pipeline. Again, here's that state line. So you can see this proposed pipeline running through both disadvantaged communities and then places where a potential spill would be, you know, more catastrophic, right? Because it's wet. And I feel like I have to say as an environmentalist too, just don't, in case you already aren't schooled in this, natural gas is not natural, right? It's fracked. This is a fracked fossil fuel. And this is an example of, you know, a market being created that is potentially running through some communities that, if there's not a Destiny Watford living among them, will not be able to mount a response and may not even know that this plan is proposed. So thank you for letting me bring you a slideshow into the salon. It feels a little weird because the salon is such a delightful and relaxed environment, but I really wanted to show you particularly that map, and just to say that when we talk about these three crises, a pandemic, racial injustice, and climate, they really are one. And at ShoreRivers, and gosh, some of you have heard me say this several times, but we keep going back to a Wendell Berry passage from 1969. Wendell Berry, an author, farmer, and Kentuckian, who said, you know, we have to see the environmental charge not as, you know, environmentalism not as separate from the civil rights movement, from the peace movement, but as a part of those, because they all have the same cause, which is a mentality of greed and exploitation. He goes on to say, the mentality that would destroy a watershed and panic at the threat of flood is the same mentality that would give institutionalized insult to Black people and then panic at the threat of race riots. It's all one problem. And make no mistake, the climate catastrophe that we are facing is orders of magnitude worse than this pandemic. All the work that ShoreRivers does, the incredible work restoring our waterways and restoring our underwater grasses, can be undone if we continue to have this catastrophic trend in severe rain events, septic overflows, warming, rising waters. Just as our successful restoration can help slow and mitigate these effects, you know, our work is very connected to climate. But this moment is possibly the biggest challenge humanity has ever faced. All of the science indicates that the next 10 years are so critical to what our future looks like. And those of us in the environmental world right now actually see this as a really hopeful moment. So without ever, you know, making light of the pain that this pandemic is causing, the hope in this moment is the disruption and the possibility for people to realize that they can change, right? I mean, everyone on this call has changed their life in huge ways this year, right? Ways that we never imagined we would have to. This hasn't been fun. I'm not suggesting that combating climate has to be like this. What I'm suggesting is we have the ability to change. And the climate fight tends to get cast as this impossible problem. There's too much inertia, but there isn't, right? We have the ability to be nimble and responsive, even to an unseen threat, even when we don't know what the outcome will be. And that's actually really exciting. My notes tell me that I have to wrap this part up, but I just wanted to add, I was reading a beautiful article in maybe late February by a historian who studies revolutions, like the French Revolution. And she said, right at the beginning of lockdown, this is what a revolution looks like. In retrospect, it feels like a single event, but in reality, it's the disruption of your everyday routine. And she closed that article a month before George Floyd's murder by saying, we don't know what the revolution will be yet, but this is how it has already begun. This is how it starts. So we are hopeful that on the other side of these three crises, which are actually one multifaceted crisis, we have an opportunity to remake some systems, to undo structural inequality. And that means we have a real chance for restoration and just communities. We have all been rethinking what's essential in our own lives, as I'm sure you all have at home and on pause here. And we have a chance to do that as a human community for our planet. So that's exciting. That's an exciting moment that we're in. All right, I did it, Tim. Now we're going to talk about how ShoreRivers is involved in environmental justice work now, and where we're going. And I have one more thing to say. I'm not completely turning it over. Don't worry, Tim. We have a couple of other ShoreRivers staff members on the call. Thanks for being here. There is so much dedication at ShoreRivers to the why of this work. Why are we approaching diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice work? I think the fact that, people are here after their workday participating in this call is a testament to that. But about a year and a half ago, we really started articulating inside the organization why we do this work. And it's because we really believe that access to our waterways is going to fuel environmental stewardship, right? We talked about this at the beginning of the call. And inclusion of diverse communities is essential to our long-term success, especially as our communities get more diverse. And that diversity makes us stronger, whether it's in our membership or our board or our staff. So that's why we're doing this work. There are related causes, and we believe that the work of environmental justice strengthens us, that really it's the only way to have a sustainable movement. So now we're turning to the how. So Tim and I are going to talk to you about a couple of different ways that we're working on how. Do you want to start, Tim?
What am I supposed to say? There's so much. I think I might have missed my cue.
So, I mean, one of the ways that we're working on it is just showing up and listening, right? So we're doing things like this, but we're also going to spaces where we feel like maybe there are people we need to hear. We are finding places where, here's one I'll lob to you. We're finding places where our mission specifically intersects with a social justice organization. So can you tell a little bit about our project with Ken Attainable Housing?
Sure, I'd love to, Darren. Yeah, so Ken Attainable Housing, if you guys aren't familiar, is building their first house for a working class Black family in just behind the middle school here in town. And
Elementary school.
What's that? Elementary school. So one of the things that we're doing is through our River Friendly Yards program, we are helping them to install a landscaping plant. So river-friendly landscaping plan that will be all native plants. So one of the great things about the plan that we're helping them install is that not only is it great for the river, because the native plants have deep roots that help absorb water and prevent runoff and nutrients from getting into the river, but it also is great for habitat, for butterflies, birds, bees, all those great things that we want to see, even in our urban or micropolitan, as Darren likes to say, areas. And the other great thing, if you happen to be, a family that is raising kids, working hard at your job, trying to make ends meet, the last thing you want to do is be spending a ton of time working on your lawn. So river friendly yards, as someone who has one, tend to be a lot lower maintenance because, native plants don't need to be pruned as much. They don't need to be fertilized. They don't need to be watered. They don't need to be mowed like grass. So, that is, our main mission goal is to improve water quality through river-friendly yards. But there are so many, added on benefits, both for the environment and the community and, justice-wise for projects like this. How was that, Darren?
That was awesome. Yes, right. There's so much dignity in stewardship. And everyone deserves to be a part of that. So yeah, so collaborating with organizations like Kent Attainable Housing. We're also collaborating with Sumner Hall and the Rising Suns Mentorship Program on an upcoming planting there. We're really working to develop the people say the leaky pipeline to conservation for youth of color, but we need a new metaphor. I was just trashing pipelines. It's the tributaries. We're working on restoring the youth tributaries to conservation work. And we have learned that means young people need to be paid for their work. They're not going to choose conservation, community service over a job at Burger King that pays $12 an hour. So we have been really aggressively working to get funding for these youth positions, including a youth watershed voice, which we hope to add to each of our watershed boards in the year ahead, but also to fund some of this work. There's no end of good conservation work, and so we can imagine this being part of the restoration economy of the Eastern Shore. And then raise your hand, Salon viewers and listeners, if you live here because you fell in love with this place or chose it intentionally. Right?
Sort of.
This is an amazing kind of community. And yes, as Tim said, Chestertown in particular is a micropolitan gem. So we really want to harness that love of place and we've been saying, an empathetic organization, a place-based organization. A lot of that right now is listening and learning. So, we're partnering with churches, we're partnering with Black Union of Kent County, the Social Action Committee, but we need to learn where people are with their connection to conservation. What do they need from us? How can we work together to amplify both of our missions?
My wrong hand.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Right. Yeah. Go.
No, I would just add that one of the things, just to kind of tie into what you're saying, that I know personally I've learned, and I think as an empathetic organization we've been learning, is the value of listening. Because I think if you went back 5 years ago, our main strategy was, let's try to convince everyone why our mission is so important and why they should care about the river. But what we've realized is that if you're an underprivileged person, you probably really don't care if the river is safe to go water skiing in, right? You have a different set of values and concerns than I have. What you might care about is, how much mercury is in the catfish that you're catching off the bridge where, so you can go home and feed your family, right? So there are a lot of concerns and things like that we've been really listening and trying to understand. And instead of trying to, like Darran was just saying, convince people come into our tent and share our values, we've been going into other people's tents and saying, what are your values? What do you care about? And then trying to make our programs match that. And I think that for me anyway, Darran's probably been doing that for years because this is just what she does. But for me, it's been a really kind of enlightening journey for me to be able to experience these things and learn about these things. So that's all.
And we need everyone's help. So if there's a place we're not showing up and we should be, that's something we'd love to hear from you, anytime.
Darran, one of the reasons that we love being here with you is because this is the kind of collaboration you all are talking about with different, other organizations in the community. And Mariah and I are having a lot of these conversations with RiverArts. So we appreciate interacting with you all. We have thought and been, doing some of those same reaching outs to different organizations and parts of the community. And when you mentioned Kent Attainable.
Uh-oh.
Oh no.
And we lost you. We lost your audio.
I think possibly what she was going to say is that Anne and I have talked some about
housing. It reminded me of something Mariah and I had talked about reaching out to them. Yes, I have a note that says my internet connection is unstable. So if I disappear, sorry, and Mariah can fill in. But we had talked about reaching out to Kent Attainable Housing and offering to do something artistic that would help them have that sense of place and pride in their new home. And when I was thinking about that while you were talking, I also realized that as you are working with these different organizations, sometimes art is just a language. And people who may not know exactly what they need from your organization or ours can use a writing prompt, a songwriting prompt, a mosaic or mural, kind of a collaborative action that we could do together that would help people kind of share their innermost thoughts without them maybe realizing that they're all their innermost thoughts. And that feedback lets us know what's really meaningful to people, and then you all and we all both can move forward in making sure our programs meet those needs. So I love the intersection of art with all that.
Yeah, well, and I have to, this could be a whole other salon, but I do want to just touch on why art continues to be an essential part of this conversation. And I think that's because art helps us to cultivate the hope and playfulness that, without which activism can't go on. If we are not intentionally growing hope right now, we cannot get to the future that we want to inhabit, right? And we've talked about how this collaboration between ShoreRivers and RiverArts was born because we feel like conservation and art are ways that we craft that future. Rebecca Solnit has said, hope is the axe you use to break down the door, right? It's not about, oh, I believe everything's going to work out all right. It is a tool, and visual art and music have always been those tools. They link movements of change. They are the light we need, right? And we need cartoonists, and we need, we need Marcy Ramsey showing us why we care about these landscapes and waterways. And another sort of bit of gospel I've been spreading is these are lifelong problems, right? We're not going to solve racial injustice or conservation in our lifetime, but we can't think about it as a long haul where we're constantly fighting. Or if we do, we're going to burn out, it's not going to work. This is a way of living that has to be full of joy and levity, or what are we fighting for, right? If we can't imagine a future, a just and verdant future with green towns and food forests and green roofs and public art in our spaces, places for people to gather for conversation, why bother, right? Not only will we burn out, but we won't be creating that future. It's not written yet, right? There is no future but what we build today and tomorrow together. So I want to invite you all to help us as we work with those converging efforts and to build that future that we want to inhabit. And part of it is just to be able to see it. And we need artists for that. So, oh my gosh, it's almost 5:40.
Darran, I will hopefully give you the next segue, which is that as you were talking, I'm thinking about, what I feel like art does for me in many communities, and whether it's the environmental movement in general, or then particularly environmental justice, I feel like step one is often just creating an awareness. The art that we are seeing or hearing makes us aware of an issue. But then step two is art that requires us or moves us to take an action. And I love those kinds of art pieces that make you not only reflect, but then give you a prompt for doing something. So back to you as far as actions.
So we do have, as we did last week, we have an action to share this week, and then I do want to make sure we have a couple minutes for questions, so we'll be quick here. Tim, last week our action was anyone can do a cleanup. Do you want to give a quick update on that?
Yeah, so quick update / reminder for those of you that were with us last week that we are doing a cleanup at Carpenter Park, which is in the Washington Park neighborhood down off Flatland Road in Chestertown. So we're doing that in conjunction with the Reverend Councilman Tolliver and some of the local community members. So that's this coming Saturday at 10 a.m. Everyone's welcome to join us. We will be doing social distancing, and masks are going to be required and all that good stuff. But we'd love to have you guys come out. We're going to be hauling away all the trash, providing the trash bags and gloves for everybody. So please come out and help us with that. 10 a.m. this Saturday, Carpenter Park.
And then your new action is a river-friendly yard. So we've already talked a little bit about this program and what it does. I know Laura and Joyce. So you you can see how this program kind of works on all of the connected problems, right? A river-friendly yard can be on any property of any size. It connects you to stewardship. It is important simply because it is an act of hope, and we have to be generating hope and moving towards a future we care to inhabit. But lawn fertilizer accounts for 44% of the fertilizer sold in Maryland. There are 1.3 million acres of lawn in our state. I've heard it recently called our largest crop, but it's a monoculture. It's not a useful crop, and we would love to help you convert some of your lawn into meadow, into thriving habitat for our threatened pollinators, songbirds, migratory birds. There's so many benefits of giving a little bit of your lawn to meadow or rain garden to catch and treat runoff. I just heard from a landscaper who's dedicating himself to helping people quit fertilizer that his treated lawns look worse, that they get depleted more quickly. So it's easy to quit, and it's easy to connect with your community association or your congregation to help do something on a larger scale. ShoreRivers can help, so you can contact me about that at any time. Planting native, reducing your lawn, making space for other creatures. These are really critical tools, and we know that they're working. So we want to encourage you to take action this week. And questions. There's never enough time, but we'd love to hear from you if you have questions.
I'm curious whether there are any open slots for Chester testers.
There are open slots for Chester testers. So Chester testers, for you guys who aren't familiar, that's our volunteer water quality monitoring program, where they monitor year-round, twice a month. It takes about 2 hours per time they monitor, so it's a huge commitment. But if you're interested, Mariah, or anyone that you know, we certainly are welcoming. We have a few open spots and would welcome new members.
And is that geography based? Like, do you have like slots in different places along the river, or
yes,
how does that work?
Yeah, so we have 27 locations throughout, at creeks and streams throughout the Chester River watershed, from Queenstown all the way up to close to Delaware, actually, past Millington. And it's consistent. We've been monitoring the same places for, I mean, since I've been around, so at least 7 or 8 years, and I think really for decades. So there are specific places, and if anyone is interested, I can send you the list of where we have openings, if you're interested in doing that.
If you wanted to share that, we could certainly share it with our network.
Yeah, I'll forward you the info. Thanks, Mariah.
Thanks.
I got a question.
Yeah.
What's the status of the acid rain situation that some years ago was said to hurt the spawning of the fish in the upper Chester? Has that gotten any better or worse? Anybody looked into that?
So I don't have any information, specific scientific information on monitoring or anything like that recently. But I would say as the climate crisis continues to worsen and as a global community, I would say our progress in reducing harmful emissions is up and down, to be generous. That certainly we have not solved that problem. So I think anything we can do to reduce acid rain, reduce emissions, that we should be doing that as a matter of regulatory policy.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I thought I had another question.
I have all sorts of thoughts about art, but I'm curious from some of the other artists who are on today, does anybody have a favorite artist who works at the intersection of environmental justice and just, you know, anything that's come to mind that you've seen that's really made you stop and think or want to take an action?
Is that a raised hand in the background over there?
Or is that Carla? Hi, Carla. I think you're still muted.
Elizabeth, were you also?
Okay.
Oh, there's Carla. Okay, Carla, then Elizabeth.
Well, the only thing I was going to say that I loved that Darran mentioned is this idea of fun. I think that's probably going to be my takeaway tonight, is that none of this is going to work if it doesn't fill our hearts, if it doesn't make us joyful, if it doesn't put a smile on our face. So in terms of thinking about environmental art, in terms of thinking about concepts, you know, maybe, well, I think so much of art is whatever the artist is trying to convey. And if their hearts are being broken by something, that will be very powerful. But just the sheer joy of being in the environment. Robbie Bear posted a bunch of the kids being over at the Lawrence Preserve, and they were picking up frogs and they were doing all these different things. And I thought that looks like more fun than anything I've ever seen. And you know that those kids are never going to forget it. So fun.
Yes, and I just want to say, if you haven't seen Extinction Rebellion's work, so this is probably the biggest global climate change group, and these guys, so they started in the UK, they staged massive social disruption protests, and you know, they've got a puppet theater committee and a, you know, fiber arts committee. They're you know, stringing weavings across Parliament, and they're you know, disrupting in ways that do not point fingers or incite violence. You know, you can't walk through an Extinction Rebellion protest and not giggle, I think. And that's part of the idea, to do it with joy and to do it in a way that invites people in instead of making people feel to blame. We are all complicit, right? We're all using fossil fuels, and we're all, you know, beneficiaries of privilege. So if we get trapped by that feeling, we can't move forward. But if we can be invited into this sense of play and imagining, then we can work together.
Great.
Yeah, absolutely. I like to think about art as a way that we all are able to both express and evoke everything that we're feeling, but that includes that joy and the fun and the delight in being a kid picking up frogs. Not that I would ever have picked up a frog, but catching lightning bugs or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I feel like that is absolutely one of the places where art and environmental justice have to come together. Just like we were talking about with Marcy last week. Yeah, Elizabeth.
So, well, back to the idea of fun. So I live just on the other side of the river in Chester Harbor, and we have a group, Friends of Rosin Creek, that we're working on a rain garden down at Fairview Park that we, you know, have pulled together with lots of help in the last couple months. Part of that is people are so anxious to do something positive and productive, and you know, that's great. And then also we have an old marina dock that was torn down recently because it was a liability, but the pilings are still there. And so the current idea among the neighbors is that to put different pieces of art on the pilings and encourage an art slalom. And so people could come kayak through, and
Oh my gosh.
it could be really cool. So we're a ways off. We right now we have some wood duck boxes up there, and we have a few other things, but I want to reach out to local artists if they would be interested.
Absolutely. That sounds great.
The great thing about Rosin Creek, other than it's also where I live, is you know, it's really a great example of the best and the worst of what our rivers have to offer, because it's stunningly beautiful. There are osprey and bald eagles and all kinds of things, and great people out kayaking and enjoying it. We saw a river otter the other night outside our dock. But at the same time, there's a seasonal algal bloom that really impacts the quality of the creek. So any excuse to get people to experience those highs and lows, what's happening to our rivers, I think would be great.
Absolutely.
You mentioned earlier
Hello.
about the pipeline going through I guess, the Delaware line area of our county. Where can you get more information on what's planned and what the timetable is for it and where it's going to go and how big it is, etc.?
Floyd, I'll send a link around with the latest information on that into the chat.
Thanks. Because I don't think very many people have any knowledge about that going on.
Yeah, I sort of vaguely on the periphery of my consciousness, I knew that there was something, but I don't know anything about it either. Joyce, were you wanting to say something? So please do.
Yes. I did just want to say thank you very much, and I've enjoyed the presentation. And I'm looking forward to the river-friendly yard presentation that's coming to our community on October the 26th at 10 o'clock. And I'm hoping that that will educate not only our landscape committee, but our residents as well. We've done quite a bit in Symphony Village and Centerville to stop some of the water runoff, and we have many rain gardens. However, a lot of them have not been maintained over the years. So I'm hoping that as more residents become educated about how important it is to plant natives, for one thing, and to perhaps try to take away some of their lawns, especially in the backs of their houses. I'm not sure that would ever go well in the front of the houses here in this community, but we can talk about that. So I want to say thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to that presentation.
We are too. Thank you. We can change, if art teaches us anything, we can change our aesthetic values.
That's right.
It's very good.
There you go.
Well, believe it or not, we're already almost 10 minutes past our deadline, which is obviously not a deadline, but we do like to try to end pretty close to 5:45 so that nobody starts to get fed up with us. But I really want to thank you, Darran and Tim, for, first of all, and also Rebecca and Connor, everybody from Shore Rivers, for having the idea to reach out to us and create this series that I know wasn't in your mind when you first sent that email, but I'm glad that it grew into this. And Darran and Tim, thank you so much for that presentation. I learned so much, and I feel inspired. I think, you know, one of the things that we've talked about in these salons, you know, kind of across all kinds of topics and questions and with a lot of different people is the fact that although we are in a time of great crisis and great stress and distress, it is also a time that feels full of opportunity and full of potential to make choices that take us in a direction that is more satisfying, more healthful, more connected and connecting, and that we want to go. So, you know, I think that by coming to salons and engaging with the community in all kinds of different ways, everyone here is, you know, taking those steps. And I believe that it is one little choice at a time, you know, that kind of keeps heading you in the direction that you're going. And so we get to make those little choices, and it doesn't have to be, you know, a major, you know, shift or a major disruption every moment, although sometimes those happen and you got to take advantage of them, I guess, when they do. So anyway, thank you so much. I'm really pleased with this
I have a toast
whole thing.
to offer. May I?
You have a toast. I'm so happy. Go ahead.
In my RiverArts class.
Yes.
to the future we build together.
Cheers.
Cheers. Good
Salud.
one.
Cheers.
Salud.
Thank you all for being here. It was wonderful.
Yes, please join us next week when we will talk about art and the environment and family.